They sat together at breakfast, discussing vacation plans. He pretended to listen to his wife, though it was clear he wasn't entirely happy with the conversation. Suddenly, his phone rang. "Yes, tonight is fine. Let's meet in my office," he said into the receiver and tossed the phone aside. The woman glanced at the unlocked screen. The conversation with Alice student had ended. The notification blinked, then changed to the wallpaper, their wedding photo. A smiling groom embraced a very young Vika, clinging to her beloved man. A lone tear rolled down her cheek. Alexei started telling his wife something again, but her interest in the conversation had vanished. "Who called?" the woman asked. "A student wants to discuss their coursework," Alexei replied curtly, adjusting his shirt. "A student or a female student?" Vika continued. "Honey, you know I don't like it when I work with girls." The husband smiled, tying his golden tie. "I love you," the woman said quietly. "What?" Preoccupied, Alexei walked around the table and grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. Glancing at the small wall mirror, he saw a fit, middle-aged man, smiled, and straightened a stray brown strand. His stylish hairstyle needed no further adjustment, so, winking at his reflection, Alexei turned decisively. "Close the door when you leave," he threw over his shoulder and walked out. The room felt particularly uncomfortable in the ensuing silence. Vika took a deep breath. Melancholy washed over her. The man she had once entrusted her heart to had lied again, without even blinking. The worst part was that he lied casually, artlessly, not even trying to come up with a truly convincing story. In the entire program, Vika knew only one Alice who actually attended her husband's lectures. A stunning girl with a sculpted figure, she was far from academic, treating her studies at the prestigious university as a mere fashion accessory. It wasn't diligence that helped her pass exams, but her huge sapphire eyes and natural charm. And what kind of coursework could they be discussing at the beginning of the semester? However, Vika knew the answer to that question. Another lie, another affair. Maybe right on this table. Tears welled up in her eyes, but Vika held back. Lectures awaited her, and students shouldn't see her crying. "Whoa, what's wrong with me?" Vika said, approaching the mirror. She saw the reflection of a pretty, albeit sad woman, not even 30 years old. She was only 7 years older than her own students, in no way inferior to the young upstarts. Pleasant features, a slender waist, not a model but not a mousy office worker either. Vika could safely be called beautiful, except her eyes had lost their former sparkle and were filled with coldness. The infidelity started right after the first year of marriage, despite all the woman's efforts to save it. Vika was caring, accommodating, always in a good mood. She exhausted herself with diets and kept her figure toned, but she couldn't hold on to Alexei. A charismatic man, accustomed to bathing in female attention, he quickly began to take his wife for granted. Alexei only remembered her when he wanted to relieve stress. But despite his callous treatment, Vika continued to love her husband, forgiving the endless string of affairs because she had once chosen him. Her hair, held by a barrette, was gathered in a high ponytail. The woman carefully examined herself, trying to drive away the bad thoughts. She couldn't manage a smile, so adopting a gloomy expression, she carefully closed the door and went to the classroom. The workday dragged on slowly, but finally came to an end. The bell rang, and the students happily chattered as they filed out of the classroom. Vika turned off her computer, put her things in her purse, and was about to leave when she noticed a broad-shouldered guy hovering near her desk. "Victoria Vladimirovna, you promised to listen to my presentation," said Kirill, catching the teacher's expectant gaze. The woman remembered that they had agreed on this last week and looked at her watch with longing. She didn't want to stay at work longer than necessary, but kicking a student out simply because of a bad mood was not her style. "But I can come back another time," the guy smiled, realizing the timing was unfortunate. "Let's go to the back room," Vika answered, getting up from the table. The small room at the end of the classroom was supposed to be used for storing textbooks, but Vika, lacking her own office, had long ago adapted it to her needs. Locking the door to protect herself from a sudden invasion by the cleaning lady, the woman took the handouts and sat down on the small sofa. The weather this year was hot. Despite the long-awaited arrival of autumn, the rooms were truly summery and stuffy. Vika unbuttoned a few buttons of her white blouse, delving into the text. "It's not very clear what is meant here." The woman pointed to the page she had read. Kirill, frozen beside her, contemplating her cleavage, flinched, but realized he hadn't looked away quickly enough. Overcoming his embarrassment, he leaned over the text and began to explain the idea presented. Was he looking at me? Vika thought, unconsciously straightening up. The thought surprised her, but left a pleasant feeling. Deprived of her husband's attention, she had already forgotten what it was like to be genuinely admired. Standing up from the sofa, she gracefully stretched and walked to the far end of the room, gracefully swaying her hips. The guy honestly tried to continue his presentation, but was constantly distracted, unable to ignore the impromptu fashion show. "Go on," she encouraged Kirill, who had lost his train of thought. Noticing a book on the windowsill, Vika reached for it, letting her skirt hug her firm buttocks. The pause in the guy's speech lengthened, and the woman smiled, noting that she was still attractive. Suddenly, she wanted to flirt, to see the spark of passion in young eyes, to remember what it was like to be a woman. Discreetly unbuttoning one more button, she turned and walked back to the sofa. "Sit down. You're not standing at the blackboard." She fluttered her eyelashes coquettishly. Kirill sat down and continued reading the text. He was no longer embarrassed. He just smiled pleasantly, occasionally caressing her figure with his eyes. Vika, meanwhile, leaned towards the guy, practically touching him, although her deepening neckline was already crossing all boundaries of decency. She shrugged her shoulders, allowing the lace of her light bra to peek out. Just a little, a couple of millimeters, not crossing the line of vulgarity, but only teasing the young man's gaze. "You're not listening to me at all, are you?" The guy playfully narrowed his eyes, looking straight into the teacher's face. "You have a great presentation. It's even a shame that such a handsome guy doesn't have any problems with my subject." She smiled charmingly. "We could solve the problem." Their faces were very close. Vika felt the smell of his cologne filling everything around her. The scent clouded her head, filling her body with a pleasant languor and making her lean even closer. "Do you have a girlfriend?" Vika said and blushed, hearing her own voice tremble. "We broke up," Kirill replied, impulsively pulling the woman towards him. With youthful fervor, he pressed his lips to hers in a kiss, robbing Vika of the ability to resist. Running her fingers through the guy's dark hair, she responded with such greed, as if she were trying to quench a years-long thirst. Kirill broke the kiss and removed the interfering barrette, allowing a wave of golden hair to cascade down her shoulders. He fell to the woman's bare collarbones, covering the exposed skin with kisses, moving higher and higher towards her neck. "What am I doing? My husband, I love him," Vika whispered, coming to her senses. "You love him," Kirill agreed, "and he—" Hot breath tickled her ear. Vika felt goosebumps run down her body. The image of Alice, her husband's latest lie prompted by her call, and his overall boorish behavior surfaced in her mind. She wanted to stop being an exemplary wife, to make him feel, at least once, what she had been going through all these years. She wanted revenge. The woman stopped her timid attempts at resistance, merging with Kirill again in a sensual kiss. His fingers deftly ran over the buttons, and the woman languidly shrugged her shoulders, letting her blouse slide down, revealing more and more under her lover's caresses. The lace, revealed in all its glory, flew away, freed from its tight embrace. It was the first time Vika had cheated on her husband, but for some reason this thought didn't cause condemnation, but rather the opposite. Rising up for a second, she pulled off her lover's shirt and rubbed against his powerful torso. The guy gently laid the woman on her back, and she had no choice but to surrender to the skillful guy. Whether it was the morning call or the hidden resentment, Vika realized what she wanted. She wanted this guy right now and yielded to the pressure of the young lover. "What if my husband sees?" was the last panicked thought that flashed through the woman's mind. "I don't care." A soft, tender kiss covered her lips, perfectly completing the sweet agony and bringing her back to reality. Vika opened her eyes and saw Kirill smiling down at her. The guy was breathing heavily, beads of sweat covered his forehead, but his eyes shone with genuine pleasure. Their bodies literally radiated heat, but the woman pressed against Kirill, resting her head on his chest. The wild surge was replaced by relaxed bliss. Vika giggled and covered her face with her hand. Kirill's fingers slowly drew patterns on her body, occasionally wandering through her hair. "What have I done?" Vika whispered sadly. The endorphins boiling in her blood receded, bringing with relaxation a feeling of slight emptiness. "It's okay, forget about your husband," Kirill replied. He leaned in to kiss the woman, but felt her shrink inwardly and just stroked her hair tenderly. "He has nothing to do with it." Vika caught the guy's worried look and smiled, dispelling his doubts. It wasn't about the infidelity. She had enjoyed her revenge to the fullest and had no regrets. But the moment of happiness had passed. Feeling desired for a moment, Vika didn't want to let go of that feeling. In reality, only her cheating husband and her unloved job awaited her. Kirill had become a beautiful mirage in her desert, but like any mirage, he was destined to fade away. "Then we need to get ready," the guy said, as if he understood everything without words. Vika nodded and gently kissed him on the cheek, inhaling the scent of his cologne one last time. They gathered their clothes, quickly tidying themselves up. Kirill unlocked the door, gallantly letting the lady go first, and pulled the key out of the lock. "I really liked your presentation," Vika said peacefully. "Come listen to more at the seminar," Kirill winked, holding out the key. She secretly squeezed her fingers when their palms met and whispered, "Thank you," with her lips alone. The guy grabbed his bag and left the classroom. The room was quiet, most of the students had already gone home. Vika sighed and, taking a mirror out of her makeup bag, began to adjust her lipstick. The daily routine had not gone away, but the look of the sad woman in the reflection had warmed a little.